When you think of the Windows Server 2003 product and some of its many features, probably one of the most important things is that it has graphical administrative tools. So for example, you can use tools like the Active Directory Users and Computers administrative tool to be able to create users and do things graphically. So there are many benefits to using graphical tools. For example, you don't have to memorize long, complicated commands. You don't have to worry about accidentally typing the wrong command because there are confirmation dialog boxes and warnings, etc. But these tools also have their limitations. For example, if I needed to create 10,000 users in a domain, it would take me a very long time to do that using just the Active Directory Users and Computers tool. So in this exercise, we're going to take a look at one method that we can use to create new objects within the Active Directory. And that method is called scripting. So what I've done here is, as we've done in the text, I've created a script file located on my system, and I've called it scriptingtest.vbs. And you'll notice from the icon that it's actually associated with as a Visual Basic VB script file. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the file by right-clicking on it and choosing Edit. And this is the same script that you'll see in the text exercise. Let's go ahead and walk through this script to see what it's doing and how it gets the job done. So the first thing that we need to do within the VB script file is to create some new objects that specify to which server we want to connect. And that's what's happening here in these first two lines. The first line shows you it's creating an object called ORoot, which we're going to use to attach to a default binding context. Now what a binding context means is it is telling the Visual Basic script file to which domain or domain controller we want to connect. In this case, we're going to use kind of some default settings which are going to connect to the local server. In this case, this machine that we're doing this exercise on is a domain controller, so I'm going to connect to the local domain controller for performing this exercise. Once we've made the connection, we've got a couple of actions that we're going to perform here. In this case, we're going to create, using the set command, a new object called OOU. Generally, a lowercase o is used to prefix an object data type. In VB script, data types are do not need to be explicitly defined, so it's sometimes helpful to have a prefix for your variables. The first step that we're going to do here is we're going to use the domain object that we created in the previous line and create a new organizational unit. And the way we do that is we're going to use the create command of the domain. And the create command actually takes two arguments. One is the type of object that you want to create, and the second argument is going to be the name of the object that you want to create. So in this case, we're going to use the special name of organizational unit, and we're going to call the OU scripting test. Now in addition to creating the OU, we also want to set one of the properties for it. So we're going to use the put command of the new OU object that we created, and we're going to set the description property to scripting test OU. So that's what's going on here. Now that alone won't actually commit the changes to the organizational unit object, so we actually have to call the set info command. So that's where we are in this line. Now similarly, we're going to create a new group, again using the set command to create a new object. And within the OU object that we just created, we're going to use its create command to create a group. And so the group argument here tells us what type of object we want to create within the OU, and the CN, or the canonical name, tells us specifies the name of the group that we want to create. So in this case, it's scripting test group. Similarly to the put command for the OU, we're going to go ahead and specify two items here: the SAM account name, which is going to be the name by which the group can be referred to, and then also a description. So we said this group was created using automation. Finally, as with the OU, we'll use the set info command to go ahead and set that info and commit those changes to the object. We don't need to walk through these specific lines next because they pretty much follow the same pattern. For example, here we're creating a user object. We're using the put command again to create two new properties. And then we're going to use the set info command to actually save those properties. Finally, for the user object that we created, we're going to go ahead and set a password. In this case, I've created a password called test password123. I went ahead and set the account to enabled by setting the account disabled property to false. The second to last line here, I've gone ahead and set the info so that I've committed those changes. And in the final line here, went ahead and added the user to a group. So let's go ahead and run this script file and see the results. I'm just going to go ahead and run it by right-clicking on the script file and choosing Open. This will very quickly execute the file and make the necessary changes. Now that the script has been successfully executed, let's go ahead and take a look at what it actually did. So here I've got the Active Directory Users and Computers tool open, and I've connected to my domain, which I've called newdomain.activedirectory.test. As we specified in the script file, a new OU was created, and it's called scripting test. Within that OU, we've got two objects that were created, one user, which is scripting test user, and one group, which is scripting test group. Let's go ahead and take a look at the properties for the user. So we'll go ahead and right-click on the user object and go to Properties. We'll see a few things that we've set. We've kind of set the bare minimum information here, but we did add a description, and it says this user object was created using automation, just as we typed in our VB script file. One thing I want to look at then is the Member Of tab, and you'll notice that the user is a member of the default group, which is the domain users group, and the user is also a member of the scripting test group. Again, that's one of the operations that we performed when using the VB script file. I'll go ahead and click Cancel here. Let's take a quick look at the scripting test group. So right-click on that and go to Properties. You'll notice again we set a description and a group name for engineering users. So as you can see, using VBScript is a very efficient way for creating groups and objects and organizational units and all kinds of structural portions of the Active Directory without using the graphical tools that are part of Windows Server 2003. It's very useful in many environments to use scripting instead of graphical tools, especially when you're trying to do operations that require many different additions of objects or changing of objects.